Capture Commission of Inquiry continued today, and Fake Mentor formally retracted her evidence regarding businessman Fana Hlongwane. Mentor had earlier testified that when she was on a flight to Dubai in 2010, Duduzane Zuma introduced her to a man he referred to as chairman. She identified the man as Hlongwane. However, Mentor backtracked, saying she realized that she'd made a mistake and that he was not the man she was introduced to on the flight.
I would like to take this opportunity once again to apologize to Mr. Fana Hlongwane, and I want to sincerely also express my gratitude for his kindness for having accepted my apology.
A newborn baby rescued from a stormwater drain in Durban is in a stable condition. It's believed the infant had been dumped there. Authorities were contacted after a pedestrian heard a baby crying. An investigation is currently underway, and she's been transported to another hospital where she'll be taken care of by specialists. A Newlands resident described what she saw today.
Go 1:20 ngiye ngezwa umsindo kodwa ngazitshela ukuthi ene umsindo wamakati ngoba kuye kube namakati la akhalayo. Kodwa mangithe masengilalelisisa kahle ngezwe ukuthi ingane ekhala kodwa ngayitshela ingane yakamakhelwane ngayitshela ukuthi ilambile mhlawumbe. Washo ukuthi ngoba vele sebusuku ngeke ngikwazi ukuthi ngimbonise ukuthi mhlamba akakayiphe ukudla ngoba mhlambe ngenze ukuthi ilambile o noma mhlambe iyagula. Ayike kwasho ukuthi ke kwaze kwasake kuseni ke ngahamba ngaye emsebenzini. Mase ngisemsebenzini sengizwa ngifanele umakhelwane ukuthi nayibo kunesimo esikanje. Sekutholakala ingane estamkweni kwilokho njani kwistorm water drain singaphandle. Kusho ukuthi ke engathi ke ingane ibimangizwa ke khona kumntwana olokho njani okwazile ukuthi ena angene abheke ukuthi ene wathola ukuthi ene ingane wase ngicabanga ukuthi ene ke mhlambe kuhlaba umkhosi ke
Children returned to school today at Hoërskool Driehoek, the scene of a tragic walkway collapse 10 days ago. The Vanderbijl School held a joint memorial service for the 4 pupils. Balloons were released in their memory. At least 12 others remain in hospital. Hoërskool Driehoek's principal says the pupils seemed uplifted today and are slowly coming to terms with the tragedy. Today marks 29 years since the release of the late President Nelson Mandela from prison. He spent 27 years behind bars for his role in the anti-apartheid struggle. Jane Dutton takes a look at this historic day.
Nelson and Winnie Mandela walking out of the gates of Victor Verster prison. These would be Mandela's first steps as a free man.
In Africa,
At Cape Town City Hall, Madiba addressed the masses, his first words in public after 27 years behind bars.
I stand here before you not as a prophet, but as a humble servant of you, the people.
Madiba had 250,000 people hanging on to his every word.
Your tireless and heroic sacrifices have made it possible for me to be here today.
With this, the doors to a free, non-racial South Africa had opened.
What I found when I came out, which already had become clear even when I was inside prison, was that the level of political consciousness on the part of the oppressed people in this country and their militancy was very high indeed. Because I would have expected that things like housing, unemployment, poverty, illiteracy, health services would have been in a far better position than they were when I went to prison.
The 11th of February 1990 will forever go down as one of the days that shaped South Africa's political future. Leanne Jansen, Cape Town.
Now, it's more than a decade since the Truth and Reconciliation Commission wrapped up its hearing into the country's painful past. Now, former commissioners want answers. They've written a letter to the President asking for an inquiry into why no one has been brought to book for the crimes they admitted to between 1960 and 1994. Now, it's not a new request. 2 years ago, the former chairperson of the Commission warned us not to waste the good work of the TRC. Let's listen to what Archbishop Emeritus Desmond Tutu had to say.
We hope so very much that we are not going to spoil a good thing. What came into being in South Africa was a fantastic thing. And please God, let us not spoil it.
I know that within the Justice Department they set up a TRC desk. But you know, I mean, we're still questioning why so many years after the TRC, there's only talk now of prosecutions.
Former Truth and Reconciliation Commissioners say cases they referred for investigation were never prosecuted because of political interference. And they say there hasn't been an official apology for victims of apartheid-era atrocities. The Commission concluded its work in 1997. So why come forward now? Joining us now is one of the commissioners who headed investigations, Dumisa Nsibeza. Very good to have you with us.
Very good to be here.
Why has this been pushed now?
Well, I'm not so sure it's being pushed only now. Certainly,
You'd push now.
Well, I suppose there is no time when you can say the revelation of what the truth is has come to an end. Just take the case of Ahmed Timor. You will know that even we in the TRC in 1997, 1998 had come to a certain finding about the so-called suicide that he committed by jumping from the 10th floor. We never bought that. But nothing was done. And it took a second inquest to go into the circumstances of his death, and the judge, now the High Court, after hearing evidence for the second inquest, was able to conclude that he was murdered. He was pushed from the 10th floor. So there isn't a time when you can say a truth that has not been revealed can no longer be pursued. And I think some of the Truth and Reconciliation Commissioners, and that includes me, did a lot of work in a restricted time period. You know, we had to investigate South African history in virtually 24 months, 34 years, from 1960 to 1994. That's a huge period of time to look into. But
incredibly emotional period, obviously, for you and for the victims. I mean, the problem is so many of these victims feel that there's no closure.
In fact, that is one of the reasons that we have now pushed for an inquiry. You see, the thing about an inquiry is that people can sit back now and say, okay, this is what the TRC did. This is what the report says. Let's look for gaps. And we are pointing out to President Ramaphosa where the gaps are. And some of the glaring and yawning gaps is the failure by the regime, the post-apartheid regime, to, after the TRC report, having identified cases for prosecution, and they just sat on their hands and did nothing. That is exactly the kind of truth that we are going to want to seek.
And I mean, you are saying or suggesting that there's political interference, political meddling. On what sort of level are we talking about here?
I'm not even suggesting that. I am actually saying it.
You're saying it.
Because there is evidence on affidavit. There was a time when, perhaps you will know, that there is a woman called Nokuthula Simelane. Nokuthula Simelane was snatched from the then Carlton Hotel in 1983. And then the Soweto security branch members applied for, for amnesty, where they admitted to having tortured her and had done all sorts of terrible things to her. But what they have not admitted to is what they did to her. They came with a story that they released her and then she must have gone back to Swaziland, and the ANC cadres may have killed her knowing that she had been detained, which is hogwash as far as we're concerned. But, and hence there has now been a trial, you know, I mean, they have since, those police people have since been prosecuted. The point
been
here,
the sort of political interference, as you suggest, as you say, why do you think you will now see an inquiry happen? What's going to change? And I know that, excuse me, you're also asking for President Ramaphosa to apologize.
those who were in the national prosecuting authorities have said so in so many words. You know, Advocate Ackerman is on affidavit as having said they didn't prosecute the TRC-related case because an executive at that time told them, please stay away from these TRC-related cases. Vusi Pikoli said the same thing on affidavit. So it's not a question of conjecture now as to what happened. We now know.
No, I'm just wondering what you think is likely to change now. Why is this going to change? Why do you think you get a better hearing?
Well, that is why we are now ready to say to President Ramaphosa,
it's time.
Put your money where your mouth is. If you want a clean government, let's start from where the road started. And the road started when the rule of law was abrogated by those who should have done better. If you are bringing a Batoli to come and clean up because, you know, she's a fresh person, then we would like to assist her. And one of the directions we would point her to is some of the cases which have remained unprosecuted. And, you know...
That's obviously incredibly important. I mean, what sort of state are some of the victims in who haven't got the closure that they needed? I mean, obviously you've got, you know, the perpetrators here and the victims. What do you think needs to happen on both sides?
You need to find out from those who are related to Ahmed Timol. After the verdict that was given in an inquest, not even in a criminal trial, after that verdict was given to the effect that Ahmed Timol was, you know, did not jump, was murdered, it was as though the perpetrators had been found guilty. Now we have a Rodriguez who's on trial. But precisely because there was this inexplicable delay in prosecuting the Rodriguez who were identifiable at an earlier stage in a post-apartheid democratic society. We have now a situation where Rodriguez is turning the law on its head by saying, oh, well, let there be a stay of prosecution because we have taken a little bit too long to prosecute me. I mean, how ironical can it be?
So how much support have you got this now? How far are you in gaining momentum to getting what you want?
Well, I'm sure after this this interview today, there will be those who will be saying, come on, Sebeza, man, just leave it there where it was. But there will be those who say the president must accede to our request. I can tell you, if these commissions of inquiry, and the current commission of inquiry into state capture is anything to go by, there will be an opportunity for some of these things that will come out because there will be terms of reference, and those of us who know what cases we investigated during the TRC, who knows what evidence is there, will come forward and say, here is the evidence. It has been available for the last 20 years. Nothing has been done about it.
And let's, I'm going to ask you again about wanting Cyril Ramaphosa to personally apologize. Why him specifically? I mean, what is it that you're suggesting there?
Well, he's the head of government. He was in the ANC. He is he leads a government of the Republic of South Africa that is led by the ANC. And he's the first person who you think of. He's the head of the ANC, he's the head of the country. And it is only too natural that we should say the highest authority in the country, who happens to be a member of the political party, which didn't do anything. What is extraordinary about this is the fact that the ANC must be applauded for having wanted a Truth and Reconciliation Commission.
Who do you think benefited ultimately from the Truth and Reconciliation Commission?
Well, I can tell you that some
whitewash of the country.
Well, it depends on which side you look at it. You know, for those who felt they needed catharsis by coming to tell their own stories in their own words, which is what the Human Rights Relations Committee was doing, to let the victims of apartheid-era atrocities from both sides of the political divide to be able to come in an environment that encouraged such disclosure of how they suffered during the requisite period between 1960 and 1994. That was a platform that gave a number of people.
Okay, we're going to have to leave it there. So obviously celebrating the incredible work that it did, but you want more. You want more answers. Thank you very much for talking to us, Dumisa Ntebeza.
Oh, yeah.
Talks collapse on a border deal as U.S. government shutdown looms. That story and more when we return. But first, here's a look at the international weather forecast.